there are guys that lived on Piru Street who were a part of the original 16 that became police officers. However, once they became police officers, they can't hang out with the homies.
Yeah.
Because you can't have the police with you. That's compromising everybody else. I mean, how are we going to discuss dealing with a particular individual from another neighborhood in terms of revenge hits, and the homie who's sitting next to me is a sheriff? And I can tell you, as a matter of fact, that when Tookie and Tramiel, the original Crips, came to Centennial and started the original fight between the 16 Pirus who were sitting in the cafeteria at Centennial, one of the main guys fighting back ended up a sheriff. The other one ended up becoming a detective in the Inglewood Police Department. So, and they were full-blown Pirus. They weren't like me. I just lived in the neighborhood, knew everybody. These guys were Piru boy soldiers. But they ended up becoming cops. But once they became cops, hey, how you doing, homie? Bye.
Yeah.
So for anybody who's a gang member to sit down and eat crab with a cop, or to sit down and share a champagne bottle with a cop, or to give a cop a Christmas present, or have that cop come to your wedding, it suggests that somebody's getting paid.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about your cop salary.
Yeah.
Now, the bigger question is, whoever they were working for, who allowed that? I mean, I'm the mayor of Compton. If I see a Compton PD working in a scenario or a situation that I know is risque, I'm going to go to the chief and say, what is our boy doing that? What's happening? How does that look to the community? And there were police officers who were disciplined, suspended, and some let go for much less. As a cop, if you get caught in an extramarital affair, you'll get fired. If your credit goes bad, you'll get fired. If you file for bankruptcy, you'll get fired. So how does 3 or 4 cops roll around with a man who society at that point was painting as the next John Gotti, a black John Gotti? Yeah, these are things that make you scratch your head.
Absolutely.
And then they go back to the original question as to whether or not we really know who killed Biggie and Tupac. But police departments are notorious for protecting their reputation. Every African American male knows that if the police arrest you and they beat you up, you're going to be charged with assault on the police. You're going to be charged. While they're beating you down, they're going to charge you. And that will be the negotiating instrument by which they make you not sue or divulge publicly what was done to you. That's just a known fact around black people, especially black males. There's a kid who I had to get an attorney for who he probably at 26 operated at about a 9-year-old level. And the police broke his jaw, damaged his brain even further. He had black eyes for months. And they charged him. He was, I think, 5'4" maybe, and about 113 pounds. And he was charged with assault on 4 police officers. Come on, Mike.
Yeah.
Right?
So clearly there's an issue. And with these 2 murders, though, wouldn't you think that we would want to solve them to demonstrate?
Absolutely. But if solving them means the dissolution of my reputation as a police department, then no, I don't want to solve it. I mean, just think if it was clear that people in the Los Angeles Police Department or the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department or the Long Beach PD were involved in the killing of a major star You think the Rams would be here?
No.
You think major corporations would want to come here?
Yeah.
The reputation of these departments are sacrosanct with their capacity to sell whatever municipality they represent. And they protect that image, even to the point that if they have to, they'll plant evidence on you if, in fact, one of their cops went a little crazy and killed you.
And so with these two murders, we have also the economic damages of somebody like Biggie, who might have earned up to $1 billion. So not just the reputation of the police force, but the city of Los Angeles and the amount of money they'd have to pay out. If he would have earned $1 billion, triple damages for punitives, you're looking at a $4 billion
Franchise.
Yeah.
Easy.
And that's probably low. And then you look at, if that leads then back to Tupac, add another maybe $4 or more billion. And then what about all of the other crimes ancillary and all those people that were affected that could then sue the department because they were maltreated? And now we're talking about maybe $15 billion of settlements.
And how many cases would have to be opened up and people freed from prison because there was an allegation that this officer did something untoward, and oh, by the way, he worked for Death Row, or he worked for Bad Boy, or he worked for one of the other major gangster rap labels, and now he's complicit in murder. So, you know, this is a delicate thing because the city of Los Angeles as a state is about the 14th largest state in the country. The city is.
Yeah.
And if you combine that with the county, my God, you know, there are 13,000 sheriffs.
Yeah. With the jail employees, there are a total of 18,000 employees at the sheriff's.
Absolutely.
That's bigger than, I think it's the biggest law enforcement organization
in the country. And that's a lot of graves to open up if 20 or 30 of those cops are rotten.
Yeah.
And if you think that out of 18,000 people, none of them are rotten, it's something wrong with your arithmetic.
Well, and we know Sheriff Jim McDonnell has sent a list over to the Police Protective League that he wanted to send to the DA's office of 300 corrupt cops that he was blocked from doing. So we know there's at least 300 that he suspects.
Well, if I could give Sheriff Jim McDonnell some advice, sending that list to the Los Angeles District Attorney is like telling Billy the Kid that Jesse James did something wrong. I mean, I just got to be frank now.
Well, I'm sure that was done as a, CYA move.
Yeah, but politically, my brother.
Yeah.
You know, in my opinion, the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office is the most politically motivated department in the world. People who are listening to this should know that when Eric Perriton, a deputy district attorney, ran against me for mayor, while he was prosecuting a death row artist, Death Row was funding his campaign against me. And he didn't get sanctioned and did not get fired. People who are listening should know that there was a district attorney, and I think he was in Major Crimes Bureau, who was renting a house to Suge Knight for what, $30,000 or $40,000 a month? It was a 2-bedroom.
Yeah.
But I mean, I went to trial, and you were there for a day, and I was actually charged with eating 2 brownies and 3 chocolate chip cookies beyond what I was supposed to spend for my food allocation. And I mean, they've got to have at least $4 million worth of expenses in trying me, but I'm political. So the notion that they won't spend a lot of money to achieve a political end is certainly something that is ridiculous if you look at some of the cases that these people have pursued for years and some of the other cases that they've never even spoken on. Where is D.A. Longo today?
Well, he's dead. Yeah.
That's not surprising to me.
Yeah. He's dead, and he was pushed out of the DA's office. And, not surprising. He was prosecuted for it, but they came back and said he didn't do anything wrong.
Was he prosecuted, or was
Well,
he?
it was a
Was it
disciplinary.
administrative prosecution?
It was a disciplinary action from the Bar Association.
Well, that would have been nice in my case.
Yeah.
How about a disciplinary action? They gave me prison time over a bowl of oatmeal.
Yeah, and then it was overturned on appeal, and they didn't like that, so they came after you again a second time.
I understand, but I'm just
No, but I mean, it's like it's a second bite at the apple. Even it's even worse.
well, of course, because
Yeah.
you have the witnesses twice. But my point to you is that forget that it's me. Forget what the outcome was. Look at the inequality.
Yeah,
I'll bet you that more money has been expended in prosecuting me than investigating the murder of Biggie Smalls.
absolutely, absolutely. So before we talked about the fact that this obviously wasn't a gangbanger hit, that they keep trying to sell that narrative, and you don't get a car boxed in with 6 barricades, and a shooter comes by. That's not a gangbanger hit. We've also ruled out that it's the highest order, because in the highest order there would have been backup to make sure those guys were dead, and they didn't walk away from this, or they didn't go to the ambulance to the hospital. And so we've kind of centered that it's somewhere in between the highest order and gang stuff. What do you think?
Or a combination of both. But let me just say this to you. If, let's use a term, Illuminati. People that influence all people. The shot callers. If they want you dead, they're going to slip a microbe into your steak. And by the time you get through eating it, you'll be dead. I mean, they could, they've been able to induce heart attacks for years. You can be poisoned. To shoot somebody on the strip, come on. Those are not the wise men of Zion. That's not the Illuminatis. That's not the Skulls. This is some stuff where people who are proletariat workers.
Well, and staging a fight inside of a casino.
Correct.
I mean, that's clearly not something gangbangers would do, but it's also not something the Illuminati would do.
Absolutely not, because they're going to make sure no one has any way to trace any of the actions that they take. Maybe you'll find out 50 years later who shot John Kennedy for real. You still don't know. You just know it wasn't Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yeah, and that he was killed immediately.
Absolutely.
I mean, dead men tell no tales.
They tell no tales. And then how did you turn around a few years later and kill Bobby Kennedy when you knew he was a target? Who made that mistake? You still don't know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But in those murders, the old-fashioned assassinations, there's a patsy sitting there waiting to be arrested. He's already got a dossier and a background in the hands of the feds that's going to get turned over to the local police, and it's going to be a state prosecution, so the feds wipe their hands of it, and then the government is free of it. But this is something different. Biggie and Tupac. This looks like something. And because it looks like something, but it's not something that happened on Grape Street. It's not something that happened in Fruittown. These murders took place in highly populated, pretty well-to-do communities. How they look don't match the scenery and the ambiance and milieu, if I might, around them. Now, I'm going to tell you straight up, I knew a lot of gang members. I mean, I grew up here. So I had to know them. They were sitting in class with me. And if you went to the average gangbanger and said, let's kill them on the Las Vegas Strip, they would say, are you crazy? How are we going to get away? Listen, if you're black, you know for a fact not to go to Las Vegas and act a fool. You can't, if you're black, even go to Vegas and act normal. Because the Las Vegas police routinely pull over, frisk, search, follow black men, especially if they're in that age group. This is just ridiculous to think that some gang person decided they were going to hit a celebrity on the Sunset Strip, on the Vegas Strip, right down the street from Beverly Hills.
Or even on Fairfax and Wilshire.
Listen, Mike, I was the mayor of Compton, well-known person, in magazines, on television. When I would drive through Beverly Hills when I was the mayor, I was petrified. Because before I was any of that, I was black. And I know that and I don't care who wants to argue the point, the police are trained to think, what is this black man doing here? So when you talk about a museum in the middle of the west side of Los Angeles, where down the street the offices of people like Stan Lathan and other noteworthy individuals go every day, that you just going to go and commit murder there? No. That's not coming out the minds of a guy that's from Compton. And this is why the subsequent murders that took place behind those killings all took place in Compton. Because you can get away with it here. You start shooting here, the people know, don't look out the window. When the police come, don't tell anybody what you saw.
Don't know nothing, don't want to know nothing.
I don't want to know.
Don't want anything volunteered to me.
Ma'am, your neighbor said you were looking out the window when this happened. She lying. Because they know the drill. Okay? So to kill somebody in an area where you probably could not control the various witnesses, you can't control what they're going to say and who they're going to say it to. You know, because a lot of witness testimony is created after the fact. It happens after the police. You know, the police have a tendency to put snitches in the area where something happens, and they just listen. You know, for the folks that don't know, if you go to the barbershop and you're down there running your mouth, somebody in there, and it may be the one cutting your hair, is talking to the cops. I mean, and these are not things I dreamt of. I was the mayor of the 9th largest city in the county of Los Angeles. Barbershops, coffee shops, donut shops. Go down there and run your mouth. The police maintain and keep listening posts, and they maintain and keep listeners. So if they wanted to solve these murders, it would be solved.
Well, and both of them happened in very populated areas where there were people all around, and yet, what happens? They disperse the witnesses, they don't get witness cards, they don't have follow-up phone numbers. Very similar to what happened to Suge at the One Oak nightclub.
Never even been a lineup. Now think about that.
Yeah. With Suge at the One Oak nightclub, they came in and turned out the club. They had 37 cameras inside that club and an off-duty sheriff lets in the shooters, and we never hear anything about it anymore.
You know, Mike, what's interesting is, even though we have very similar perspectives of what happened, you don't really have to be cautious about what you say. That does not mean that you're out the briar patch by any means, broaching topics such as these. But there are so many ways to silence African American males that are acceptable to society. And, you know, the average white person, when they hear that a black person has been arrested for something or has been shot by something, they think, what did he do? He had to be doing something. I mean, by gosh, our cops just don't drive around and kill people. They would be mistaken. I settled more police brutality cases in Compton that you could shake a stick at. Cases where cops literally shot people, had them on the ground, reloaded, and shot them again. So, I'm awful careful about what I say.
Sure.
And you got to read between the lines.
Of course.
But if anyone thinks that somebody who's a gang member is going to figure they can commit murder on the most popular rapper in the world on the Sunset Strip and get away with it, that's just simply not how gang members think. The key is that they don't want to get caught. And since they don't normally have connectedness to the police and connectedness to judges and prosecutors, that means the execution of the hit has to happen in such a way where the possibility of them getting away is far greater than the possibility of getting caught. Because if you're black and you do something like that, you're going to get 1 or 2 sentences, life in prison or death.
So what about even just rolling up on a Death Row Records entourage that was known to employ off-duty police officers and have lots of guns in that entourage? Wouldn't that also just be kind of foolish?
Well, what about the possibility of just you being a Crip and rolling up on Suge?
Yeah.
How does that work?
Yeah. I mean, Suge alone.
I mean, this is Suge Knight.
Yeah. This is somebody who pistol whip people with guns on a regular.
On a regular basis. Who's going to just roll up on him?
Nobody. Nobody that's thinking, nobody that's street smart.
You could sing Keith Sweat right now. Nobody, baby. Nobody.
And yet, this shooting happens in Las Vegas.
And what they both have in common is nobody's caught. And I mean, that's almost impossible.
And if you would almost have to know that the entourage had been disarmed for you to roll up on that entourage with any degree of certainty that you were going to get away with it.
You would either have to know it for a fact, or you're making an assumption that may cost you your life. I mean, just, say they don't know it. See, I like to use POE, process elimination. I'm a gang member. I'm getting ready to go kill Tupac, and I'm going to kill Suge Knight. And I'm just going to roll up and shoot him. Do I think that's doable? No.
No. Especially not the legend of Suge Knight back
and
then.
He's got his multi-million-dollar boy in the front seat?
Yeah.
Come on.
At the height of Suge Knight's career with Death Row Records.
So I think we can dismiss the gangbang theory. We can dismiss that it was a revenge hit. We can dismiss the notion that it wasn't well planned. We can dismiss the notion that the killer remains unnamed. Somebody knows who he is. And I think you have some documentation that we're going to be discussing in the upcoming episodes of who he is. I mean, the trigger puller. But as I told you, I've never been interested in the guy who pulled the trigger. I want to know who provided the gun and the bullets, who provided the plans,
The cover.
the cover, the scenario. That's something that would, pique my interest. And for those who are out there listening, it should pique your interest as well. Because Martin Luther King, if he was right about anything, was right about this. A threat to justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And when people can just decide they want you dead and pull it off wherever they feel like pulling it off and nothing happens, you can't be feeling safe as an American citizen. That means if you're a Ku Klux Klan, you can be clipped. If you're a member of the mafia, you can be clipped.
If you're a member of Congress,
You can be clipped.